short time, they have gained more independence, more recognition, more respect as human beings than you and I have. And you and I live in a country which is supposed to be the citadel of education, freedom, justice, democracy, and all of those other pretty sounding words. New bridges must be built because in the minds of the majority of our people today, Africa is too far away. So the only way you and I can point them in that direction is build new bridges. We have to have the type of understanding of Africa and the type of understanding of our people here in order to build a bridge, a contact, a line of communication between the two. And once the lines of communication have been established, and our African brothers can stretch forth their hands and reach us, and we can stretch forth our hands and reach them, why there's nothing that this blue-eyed man in this country will be able to do to you and me successfully from that day onward. I don't think when a man is being criminally treated, that some criminal has the right to tell that man what tactics to use to get the criminal off his back. When a criminal starts misusing me, I am going to use whatever necessary to get that criminal off my back. Don't blame a cracker in Georgia for your injustices. The government is responsible for the injustices.
Flight 115 from Cairo, arriving 425. Passengers now unloading at gate 6.
Malcolm, have your experiences with white-skinned Muslims in Africa and the Middle East made you feel that relations between Negroes and whites who are not Muslims is any more possible?
When I was on the pilgrimage, I had close contact with Muslims whose skin would in America be classified as white, and with Muslims who themselves would be classified as white in America. But these particular Muslims didn't call themselves white. They looked upon themselves as human beings, as part of the human family, and therefore they looked upon all other segments of the human family as part of that same family. Now, they had a different look or a different air or a different attitude than that which is reflected in the attitude of the man in America who calls himself white. So I said that if Islam had done that for them, perhaps if the white man in America would study Islam, perhaps it could do the same thing for him.
At Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on the way to Mecca, I remember the ancient words of Allah. Proclaim the pilgrimage among men. They will come on foot and upon lean camel. They will come from every deep ravine. From Mecca, the holy city of Islam, I wrote to friends in America, never have I witnessed such sincere hospitality and true brotherhood as is practiced here in this ancient holy land, the home of Abraham, Muhammad, and all the other prophets of the Holy Scriptures. You may be shocked at these words coming from me, but what I have seen has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held, to toss aside some of my previous conclusions. For during the past 11 days, I've eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, slept on the same rug, and prayed to the same God, with fellow Muslims whose eyes were the bluest of blue, whose hair was the blondest of blonde, and whose skin was the whitest of white. We are truly the same because their belief in one God has removed the white from their minds, the white from their behavior, and the white from their attitudes. Wearing the Ihram garb of a pilgrim, I made the 7 circuits around the Kaaba. I drank from the sacred well of Zemzem. I ran between the hills of Safa and Marwa. I stood on Mount Ararat and with my brothers proclaimed, I come, O Lord, I come. God is great. Lead us, O Lord, in peace. And for the first time in my 39 years on this earth, I stood before the Creator of all and felt like a complete human being. Sincerely, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcom X.
I think a lot of people are confused by the new Arabic name, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz.
I've always had the name on my passport, Malik El-Shabazz, only I only used it in the Muslim world. Well, Hajj is a title that is given to any Muslim who makes the pilgrimage to Mecca during the official Hajj season.
Well, will you now use Shabazz and drop X?
I'll probably continue to use Malcom X and I'll probably use it as long as the situation that produced it exists.
You don't feel that Shabazz takes the place of X?
My going to Mecca and going into the Muslim world, into the African world, and being recognized and accepted as a Muslim and as a brother may solve the problem for me personally. But I personally feel that my personal problem is never solved as long as the problem is not solved for all of our people in this country. So I remain Malcolm X as long as there is a need to protest and struggle and fight against the injustices that our people are involved in this country.
Are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Oh, yes. Please. The audience will have to be quiet. Yes, as I pointed out when I was during my traveling, that African nations and Asian nations and Latin American nations look very hypocritical when they stand up in the United Nations condemning the racist practices of South Africa and that which is practiced by Portugal and Angola, and saying nothing in the UN about the racist practices that are manifest every day against Negroes in this society. Even in South Africa, those Africans aren't faced with bayonets and aren't faced with police dogs. I would be not a man. If I was in a position to bring it in front of the United Nations and didn't do so, I wouldn't be a man.
Malcolm, do you intend to lead the charge in the United Nations?
Well, I find that to say you're going to lead something creates a lot of hostility, division, jealousy, and envy. I hope to work with any group of leaders or any group of organizations to do whatever is necessary to see that this problem is brought before the United Nations.
Have you had any commitments from any nations in Africa to support your move?
I would rather not say at this time. But one thing I found in my travels, all of them look upon us as their long-lost brother.
You realize the implication is that you have had such commitments when you say...
This is your interpretation of what I said. One thing that I found in all of my travels was that all of the Africans, not only the Africans, but the Asians and the Muslims, look upon us as their long-lost brothers. And America had actually tricked many of them into a hands-off policy by giving them the impression that she was honestly trying to do something to solve the problem. My argument over there was designed to prove that it is impossible for the United States government to solve the race problem. It's impossible.
Malcolm, on your trip abroad, you said you sensed a feeling of great brotherhood and that conceivably you would be working toward integration in this country now. At least this is what you're reported to have said. Have you any comment on it?
I don't think that I ever mentioned anything about working toward integration. They haven't even got integration right here in New York City. You have worse integration problems in the North than they have in the South. So if it doesn't work if you can't bring about integration in New York City as international, cosmopolitan, up-to-date as it's supposed to be, you will never get integration anywhere else in the country.
Are you prepared to work with some of the leaders of the other civil rights organizations?
Certainly. We will work with any groups, organizations, or leaders in any way, as long as it's genuinely designed to get results.
Does your new beard have any religious significance?
No, not particularly, but I do think that you'll find black people in America, as they strive to throw off the shackles of mental colonialism, will also probably reflect an effort to throw off the shackles of cultural colonialism. And they may begin to reflect desires of their own, with standards of their own.
Malcolm, a more controversial remarks was a call for black people to get rifles and form rifle clubs sometime back. Do you still favor that for self-defense?
I don't see why that should be controversial. I think that if white people found themselves the victim of the same kind of brutality that black people in this country face, and they saw that the government was either unwilling or unable to protect them, that the intelligence on the part of the whites would make them get some rifles and shotguns and protect themselves. Now, Negroes are developing some kind of intellectual maturity too. And they can see that by having waited upon the government to protect them has been a wait that has been in vain. So any of them who live in areas where the government is not able to do its job, then we do have to get together and do a job of protecting ourselves.
No Negro leaders have fought for civil rights.
What do you mean
they
by
have
fought?
begged for civil rights. They have begged the white man for civil rights. They have begged the white man for freedom. And anytime you beg another man to set you free, you will never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourselves. And until the American Negro lets the white man know that we are really, really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom, our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
I'd like for men to get to know, too, that since he's been gone, the wheel ain't stopped. We've still been chopping them down with their hate and with all that guns, but they ain't stopped us, and they ain't gonna stop us.
When we get to Montgomery, we want to hold council with Mr. Watt. We don't have a fight with the Ku Klux Klan. We got to fight with these folks over here in this courthouse. Unfortunately, I know that some of them probably was out under some of the sheets themselves.
Now we have the type of black man on the scene in America today who just doesn't intend to turn the other cheek any longer.
We want to let the whole world know that we are going to pick our heroes from today on. You'll never see me stand up and tell this thing national anthem represents me. We want to turn on the gas. We want to turn on the water. We want to sell the clothes. We want to sell the cars. We want to be men. We want self-determination.
Back during slavery, when black people like me talked to the slaves, they didn't kill him. They sent some old house Negro along behind him to undo what he said. You have to read the history of slavery to understand this. There were two kinds of Negroes. There was that old house Negro and the field Negro. And the house Negro always looked out for his master. When the field Negroes got too much out of line, he held them back in check. He put them back on the plantation. The house Negro could afford to do that because he lived better than the field Negro. He ate better, he dressed better, and he lived in a better house. He lived right up next to his master in the attic or the basement. He ate the same food his master ate and wore his same clothes. And he could talk just like his master. Good diction. And he loved his master more than his master loved himself. That's why he didn't want his master hurt. If the master got sick, he'd say, "What's the matter, boss? We sick?" When the master's house caught a fire, he'd try and put the fire out. He didn't want his master's house burned. He never wanted his master's property threatened. And he was more defensive of it than the master was. That was the house Negro. But then you had some field Negroes who lived in huts, had nothing to lose. They wore the worst kind of clothes, they ate the worst food, and they caught hell. They felt the sting of the lash. They hated their master. Oh, yes, they did. If the master got sick, they prayed that the master died. If the master's house caught a fire, they prayed for a strong wind to come along. This was the difference between the two. And today you still have house Negroes and field Negroes. I'm a field Negro.
The dark people are waking up. They're losing their fear of the white man. No place right now where he's fighting is he winning. Everywhere he's fighting someone your and my complexion. And they're beating him. He can't win anymore. Nowhere on this earth does a white man win in a guerrilla warfare. It's not his speed. It takes heart to be a guerrilla warrior. A guerrilla is on his own. All you have is a rifle, some sneakers, and a bowl of rice. And that's all you need. And a lot of heart. I just want to give you a little briefing on on guerrilla warfare because before you know it,
I hope I haven't put anybody on the spot. I'm not intending to try and stir you up and make you do something that you wouldn't have done anyway. I pray that God will bless you in everything that you do. I pray that you will grow intellectually so that you can understand the problems of the world and where you fit into in that world picture. And I pray that all the fear that has ever been in your heart will be taken out. And when you look at that man, if you know he's nothing but a coward, you won't fear him. If he wasn't a coward, he wouldn't gang up on you. He wouldn't need to sneak around. This is how they function. They function in mobs. That's a coward. They put on a sheet so you won't know who they are. That's a coward. No. The time will come when that sheet will be ripped off. If the federal government doesn't take it off, we'll take it off.
I think you'll find that if Negroes ever have to resort to any kind of physical action to defend themselves, many white people will be on the side of Negroes. Many white people are fed up with what the Negroes suffered. And this is what I had to become aware of on my pilgrimage to Mecca. I could see then that there are many white people in this country who will side with the Negro in whatever he has to do to protect himself.
But that's a considerable change of opinion in Malcom X.
No, today I'm speaking for myself. Formerly I spoke for Elijah Muhammad. And everything I said was, Elijah Muhammad teaches us thus and so. I'm speaking now from what I think, from what I have seen, from what I have analyzed, and the conclusions that I have reached.
Then the white man is no longer the devil, and he is no longer bound to be evil?
If I judge a man by his conscious behavior, I am not a racist. I don't subscribe to any of the tenets of racism.
Then there are good whites and good blacks and bad whites and blacks.
It's not a case of being good and bad, good or bad blacks and whites. It's a case of being good or bad human beings.
Do you feel that your message, apparent message of love that you brought back from Islam is the real reason they're after you, because you're not hating as hard as they want you to?
Well, I never did hate anybody hard. But I do know that when I wrote that letter saying that there were white people in Mecca, it shook up a lot of Muslims, because most of the Muslims who follow Mr. Muhammad absolutely believed that it was impossible, physically impossible, I should say divinely impossible, for a white person to go to Mecca. And my trip there shattered that image, or that misconcept. Anyone call you directly, Malcolm? I've been receiving calls ever since I left Black Muslim movement.
And what sort of calls, Malcolm? You're disenchanted in view of the fact that these men who were your brothers are making threats against your life?
No, because actually it's not their fault. Most of them, now Joseph and the officials, they have a knowledge of what it's all about. But the rank and file Muslim brother does not know what it's all about. They are out of religious sincerity. They think that they are doing the will of Allah by protecting a man who I myself taught them was divine. So I don't in any way fault them. But those who are over them and give the orders, and actually the ultimate order comes from Elijah Muhammad himself.
I think someone should say something to speak out against the acts of my blood brother Malcolm. Since I'm one of those who brought my brother Malcolm to Islam, I'm taking this task on myself. Because I see where my brother Malcolm, angered by the little misfortune of being suspended for speaking out of turn and against instruction, now resorts to slander, slurs, and intimidations of Mr. Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's family, and the Muslim followers of Mr. Muhammad.
As long as I represented the Black Muslim movement as an example of morality, unity, and militancy, as long as I could do that, I represented it. It was when I realized that it could not be represented as that I came on and started working among the non-Muslim Negroes, as I announced in January. And I had no intention, or rather March, and I had no intention of ever even speaking on this. Had they left me alone, you still wouldn't know what really took place.
Because now I see my brother pursue a dangerous course which parallels that of the precedent set by Judas, Brutus, and Benedict Arnold, and others who betray the honor and trust relationship between them and their leaders.
Why are they threatening your life?
Well, primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that I'm out of the black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that Elijah Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls, 6 different teenage girls who were his private personal secretary. The one who first made me aware of this was Wallace Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's son.
Because I am aware of the great mental illness which besets, unfortunately, many in America, and which besetted my mother, whom I love, and many of my other brothers, and which now may have taken another victim, my brother Malcolm.
And I had stated in a newspaper article about an effort to take my life back in January, and at that time the Muslims denied it. In fact, they tried to make it appear to my brother that I was insane. But on a program in Chicago called Hotline, that's moderated by Wesley South, John Ali, the national secretary, admitted, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, one of these days last week, that they absolutely were going to kill me.
What steps will you take to protect yourself from this threat?
I take no steps. I have a rifle. If anybody comes to my house without a good reason, I intend to try and use it, and that's all.
Now, he's told me that he was having some harassment. Could you give me an idea of some of the things that have happened?
Well, in July, when I was in the hospital having my last baby, my 3 small daughters saw my husband almost killed across the street. I called the 114th precinct a few days ago. They informed me that it was nothing they could do.
Few of these threats, are you concerned about your own life right now?
No, I don't worry. I'll tell you, I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything. This is Leon Amir, who was Cassius Clay's secretary, whom they beat unmercifully up in Boston.
I was attacked by them in Boston on December the 25th in the lobby, the hotel lobby of the Sherry Biltmore Hotel. And they're still after me.
And it was he who heard Elijah Muhammad Jr. come to New York when Elijah Muhammad was at the Armory in June of last year. Jr. stood up and told the fruit, many of whom are here now also, that I should have been killed, that my tongue should have been put in an envelope and sent back to Chicago by now. And then Clarence, the captain from Boston, and John, the captain from Springfield, came to New York to assassinate me and came to him to get a silencer and couldn't get it. So the police know this. It's not something that's new. They just wait until the job is done and then they step in.
You mean he was going to kill you?
Oh, yes. One of them was, an attempt was made to get one of them to wire my car with an explosive. That one is with me right now.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already. I wanted you to know that my house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now, they had come around they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. They covered the front completely, the front door. Then they had come to the back, but instead of getting directly in the back of the house and throwing it this way, they stood at a 45-degree angle and tossed it at the window so it glanced and went on to the ground.
I don't know if I woke my husband up or he woke me up, but I remember him pushing me out of the bedroom door, and I looked to my right, and I saw all of the fire.
And the fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But had that one gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight. I would not wait.
The house itself has been the object of controversy between Malcolm and black Muslims. The Muslims contend they own the property and have gone to court to evict Malcolm.
We have been trying to get the property back through legal means. And today, the 15th of February, we were due the final ruling on the property, which came through favorable to the Muslims.
The police know the criminal operation of the black Muslim movement because they have thoroughly infiltrated it.
Well, Malcolm claims you did it. You claim you didn't do it. Who do you feel bombed the house?
Well, it could be a publicity act.
Are you inferring then that Malcolm may have bombed his own home with his family in it?
We hope that it's not a case of if he can't have it, we can't either.
That's what I said. The Muslims claim I bombed my house. And if anybody can find where I bombed my house, they can put a rifle bullet through my head. It was my children and my own life and my wife's life that was at stake. You know what what temperature was? It was about 15 or 20. I stood in my underwear, bare feet, in the middle of my driveway with a gun in my hand for 45 minutes, waiting for the police or waiting for the fire department to come. If I want to put on a show, I can find a better way than that to put it on. And if you attack me, that's one thing. I know what to do when you start attacking me. But when you attack sleeping babies while you are lower than a god, the only thing that I regret in all of this is that two black groups have to fight and kill each other off. I feel responsible for having played a major role in developing a criminal organization. Thousands of brothers and sisters come in who were in the same condition. And whatever they were doing, they would stop it overnight, just through faith. And faith alone. I, for one, disassociate myself from the movement completely, and I dedicate myself to the organizing of black people into a group that are interested in doing things constructive, not for just one religious segment of the community, but for the entire black community. Soon as we established our religious authenticity with the Muslim world, we set up the Organization of Afro-American Unity and took immediate steps to make certain that we would be in direct contact with our African brothers on the African continent. So the first step that has been taken, brothers and sisters, since Garvey died, to actually establish contact between the 22 million black Americans with our brothers and sisters back home was done by two organizations. And you know we've got to unite with them because there are 700 million Muslims. And we sure need to stop being the minority and become part of the majority.
One of the things that's going to help to bring this about is the independence of Africa. One of the only reasons that we in the West have never organized, we have hated our image and our African image. And because Africa has been in the hands of people who have created an image of Africa that's negative and hateful. And it has been hateful to us. We haven't wanted to identify with it. But now that Africa is getting independent and in a position to create its own image, and it's a positive image, those of us in the West look at the African image and see how positive it is. We begin to identify with it. We become proud of Africa, and we become proud of our African blood, our African heritage. And this is what is beginning to make the Africans in the Western Hemisphere today develop more race pride. And as this race pride develops, then it has a tendency to make us want to unite together and work together. And your Western imperialists and colonialists consider this to be a grave threat. Today, for the first time, the black people of the West are beginning to look homeward. They're beginning to look back toward the mother continent of Africa, and they're gaining spiritual strength from these roots. The African continent is on the rise. The motherland is on the rise, seeking and fighting for his place in the sun. But his fight is putting the same spirit in the black people in the West, and we are also seeking and fighting for our place in the sun. And we will not rest until that place has been secured.
What's your plan now?
I'm going back to the States first and see how my family is doing. Yes. Got a family there. And see what develops. I had gotten an invitation to visit Paris from the Afro-American community in Paris, which was sponsoring a rally in conjunction with the African community. When I got to Paris, the man said I couldn't come in. Some man, French man. They gave me no explanation other than to say, we have our orders. They wouldn't let me phone the American embassy, and they tried to imply that the American embassy was behind it, which I told them that I didn't know that France was a satellite of the United States. Well, this made them angry because they like to be independent, or pretend to be independent. They were taking their orders from someone as high up in the French foreign ministry who did not want me to enter France. And there's a reason for it. I don't blame them. And I told them while I was there that maybe my plane got mixed up and I was in South Africa in the wrong country. I told them this couldn't be Paris, it must be Johannesburg. And they got red. And you know how they can get red. There's a large, increasing number of dark-skinned people swelling the dark population of France and Britain, and it's giving them a great deal of cause for worry. No effort has been made to unite the Afro-American community or the American Negro community with the West Indian community, and then those two communities with the African community, and those communities with the Asian community. This has never been done. And this frightened many interests in this country. Many people in this country who want to see us the minority and who don't want to see us taking too militant or too uncompromising a stand are absolutely against the successful regrouping or organizing of any faction in this country whose thought and whose thinking pattern is international rather than national. And then if this man over here plays too rough, we got some brothers who can play as rough as he. There's a worldwide revolution going on. It goes beyond Mississippi. It goes beyond Alabama. It goes beyond Harlem. What is it revolting against? The power structure. The American power structure? No. The French power structure? No. The English power structure? No. Then what power structure? An international Western power structure. So our next move is to take the entire civil rights struggle into the United Nations and let the world see that Uncle Sam is guilty of violating the human rights of 22 million Afro-Americans and still has the audacity or the nerve to stand up and represent himself as the leader of the free world. There'll be a hot time in the old town. With regret, with great regret. Now, I am well aware of what I'm setting in motion by what I'm saying up here tonight. I'm well aware. But I have never said or done anything in my life that I wasn't prepared to suffer the consequences for.
Someone about the first third of the audience shouted, "Come out of my pocket, come out of my pocket." And I heard my husband say, "Everything is all right, everything is all right." And someone about third or so that was seated in about the third row stood up, and I heard shots, and I saw people crawling on the floor. And so I got down too. But then when I was looking out and I saw someone look in amazement to the front, I knew they had shot my husband.
Was he in on arrival?
He was dead on arrival, and they took him into the third floor emergency room, and several doctors tried to revive him for about 15 minutes, and there was no response. I mean, he was pronounced dead at 3:30.
Has the body been identified?
When it was brought in, we didn't get a positive identification. We admitted the patient as John Doe.
He raised his hand in a Muslim greeting, Salam Alaikum. At that point, I heard a rumbling behind me, and I turned around in my seat to see what it was. Then I saw two guys standing up, and the next thing, Malcolm had his hand up. He said, "Stay cool, stay calm." Just then, the gunfire went off, and his hand was up. I remember this. I turned around quickly, and the next thing I saw was Malcolm falling back in a dead faint. The chairs were being knocked over. There were screams. Everybody was in a mad confusion. I incidentally saw a guy running out, evidently one of the perpetrators running out, and he was shooting like a cowboy.
Let's start from the beginning, huh? All right. You fellas start asking questions. If you want the story, I'll give it to you. All right. Forget it.
You can describe what happened here.
All right.
You ready? Ready? Roll. Chief, could you describe what happened here today?
At about 3:15 p.m. This afternoon, there were about 400 persons present in the ballroom here, representing an organization known as the Afro-American Unity Organization, headed up by Malcom X. Malcolm was addressing the audience from the speaker's platform when apparently two men approached the speaker's rostrum and discharged shots at him from apparently very close range.
How many shots were there, Chief?
Apparently there were at least 8 or 10 shots fired, 7 of which hit Malcolm.
Were they all pistol shots, sir?
I'm not certain at this time whether they were all pistol shots. We did recover a sawed-off shotgun near the speaker's platform.
Where was Malcolm hit?
He sustained one shot in the lower right chin, and the other 6 hit him in the chest and body.
When did you see your husband last?
Well, yesterday he was going to check in at a hotel to be able to get some work done that he wanted to get done, that he couldn't get done where we're staying because it's crowded. We moved in with friends after our house was bombed. He called me last night and said that he had picked up his typewriter and that he was going to get the work done. And he called me, and I asked him before he left if I could come to the meeting. I said, "Can I come to the meeting tomorrow?" And he says, "No." And then today he called me, and he says that he'd like for me to come to the meeting, and he'd like for me to bring all of the children.
How many suspects do you have?
We are not calling anyone at this moment suspect. We have witnesses whom we are questioning.
How many witnesses?
I am not going to state how many witnesses at this time.
Are the witnesses you're holding Muslims?
I will not comment on anyone's religious beliefs.
What was the status of police protection at the Malcolm X's speech today?
We had a complement of police assigned, but only to the outside.
There were no police at this meeting then, were there, Inspector?
There were no uniformed policemen assigned inside this ballroom.
Have you taken measures to protect the family of Malcolm X?
We have.
Do you fear for your own life and the lives of your children?
Yes.
Since the bombing of your home, have the police made any effort to offer you protection?
Well, I guess they did make an effort, yes.
Do you want police protection? Mrs. Shabazz, do you believe it was the black Muslims who assassinated your husband?
Would you say flatly that no black Muslims were involved in the shooting of Malcolm X?
I wasn't there, but I don't believe that any of my followers was there. That's nothing to do with it at all. The way I see it, Malcolm is the victim of his own preaching. He preached violence, and so he became the victim of it.
The assassination of Malcolm X was an unfortunate tragedy, and it reveals that there are still numerous people in our nation who have degenerated to the point of expressing dissent through murder, and we haven't learned to disagree without being violently disagreeable.
I am not convinced, however, that Elijah Muhammad and the black Muslims had anything to do with his killing. I think that we'll find that it runs much deeper than that.
Malcolm X, last week, sought to make contact with the State Department to discuss threats against his life. I note that he said in a press interview last week also that he was practically dead. He was going to be killed because he knew too much. These things raise questions in my mind. What did he know that was about to bring about his death? Why did he consider the matter to be a responsibility which should be brought to the attention of the State Department? It seems to me that these questions are serious enough to require a federal investigation into the circumstances surrounding Malcolm X's murder. We are therefore urging upon the federal government, upon the president indeed, that there be a federal inquiry launched by the proper federal agency into the circumstances surrounding the assassination.
Whom do you blame for your brother's death?
I will quote my brother the day before he died, referring to the bombing of his house. He stated that he felt the bombing of his home was much bigger than the black Muslims. 1 week later, he was assassinated. If he felt that the bombing was bigger than the black Muslims, then I feel that possibly his assassination was bigger than the black Muslims. The American system killed my brother. The hatred, the cultivated hatred, the desire to lust for power, the desire to control, the desire to hinder progress, to profess freedom and then block it.
What do you think of Malcolm X's death?
I know it wasn't no accident.
Who do you believe is responsible for Malcolm X's
The white
death?
power structure in America is behind it. They're quick to capitalize on by saying that one of his own kind did it, but they put it up to be done.
What do you mean, the white power structure?
The white power structure of America. They know they had more to gain by getting Malcolm X out the way than they had by letting him live. That's why I say.
But what is the white power structure?
Never mind, I just said the white power structure. You know the white race, don't you?
In the last year, like Roy Wilkins said, he changed. He wanted to get along with the white people. But you people didn't want to get along with us.
What does Malcolm X's death mean to you? What do you feel about it?
What do you feel about it?
What do you feel about
It's a blow to every black people in the United States of America. Black!
It's what?
It's a blow, he said.
It's a blow.
Blow, he said.
Yes.
He says a blow to every black American, black people in the United States. That's what he was saying.
Why is it a blow to you?
Because he's a part of me. Because he looks like me. And his skin is me. He's a black man and I'm a black man. And he takes up for black emancipation. That's right. That's right.
He was a hero to me. He stood out among all black people.
That's
he
right.
showed the white man where it was at.
Well, why was he a
got
hero?
respect. Why was he all fit in Princeton and all these big white universities? Because they respected him too, the way I respect him.
That's
he meant something to me. That's why I'm down here.
That's right. Well, they killed Malcolm X before. They had right killing him. He was right. Me and I saw him. If you kill him, there's going to be more killing going on. That's right.
And you're saying that you believe this was paid for by whites?
Yes, by white people. Because what
What would it benefit one of us to kill him? It wouldn't benefit us anything at all. Just a white power structure of this country. Anytime a black man in this country stands up for his constitutional rights, he dies.
What did Malcolm X mean to you?
He meant a great deal to me and my people. I'm sorry that a good man is gone. At the first I hear of it, I couldn't have cried anymore, I don't believe, if I had lost my mother.
What did he mean to you? Can you tell me a bit more about it?
He meant deliverance for my people. And I hope we all walk in the same footsteps as Malcolm X was walking in.
Here, at this final hour, in this quiet place, Harlem has come to bid farewell to one of its brightest hopes, extinguished now and gone from us forever. For Harlem is where he worked and where he struggled and fought, his home of homes, where his heart was and where his people are. And it is therefore most fitting that we meet once again in Harlem to share these last moments with him. For Harlem has ever been gracious to those who have loved her, have fought for her, and have defended her honor even to the death. It is not in the memory of man that this beleaguered, unfortunate, but nonetheless proud community has found a braver, more gallant young champion than this Afro-American who lies before us, unconquered still. Many will ask what Harlem finds to honor in this stormy, controversial, and bold young captain, and we will smile, and we will answer and say unto them, did you ever talk to Brother Malcolm? Did he ever touch you? Did you have him smile at you? Did you ever really listen to him? Did he ever do a mean thing? Was he ever himself associated with violence or any public disturbance? For if you did, you would know him. And if you knew him, you would know why we must honor him. Malcolm was our manhood, our living black manhood. That was his meaning to his people. And in honoring him, we honor the best in ourselves. And we will know him then for what he was and is, a prince, our black shining prince who didn't hesitate to die because he loved us so.
To be respected